Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today, and if you want proof of my Bethesda mental illness, this is the best video for you, because yes, I'm about to take a single paragraph of text and turn it into a video way longer than it probably needs to be, but I like talking about Bethesda stuff from time to time, and with Starfield, it's a particularly interesting case. But when this news crossed my desk, I told my editor Dan, I was like, I'm going to hold myself back. I have a lot of thoughts. I'm going to hold myself back. We'll talk about this another time when there's more to pick apart. But then my speculative part of my brain started going, and I went down this rabbit hole, and I went, wait, I have a lot of thoughts now. You know what? Whatever. I'm just going to share them. For those who are interested, here you are. If you're not interested, that's cool. We upload like 50 times a week, so we're good on both ends. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our first Starfield video in a long while. If we're talking like dedicated Starfield video, it's been since Shattered Space, and you already know why. So what's going on with the future of Starfield is a lot of what this conversation is going to be about. So join me in that conversation. Let's talk about it. If you're new here, you're into what's going on with Bethesda, consider subscribing. So the reason why the update on an update is kind of important is because many wondered between the Shattered Space reception and the waning player count, plus Elder Scrolls 6 being up next, if Bethesda maybe overcommitted verbally to the support, and if the business realities were kicking in and they kind of just went, you know what, we wanted to support this for multiple years, but we're actually not going to. It doesn't make sense. We're just going to go ahead and move on to Elder Scrolls 6, especially when the last update we got for Starfield was in November of last year. Before that, it was the Starfield Shattered Space release date of September 30th. So it's become increasingly spare. That's to be expected for a single player game, mind you, but for one that promised years of updates, I definitely get why people expected more, or like maybe a year in review, or here's what's coming up in 2025. I think that's a fair expectation from players of the game. Now, I'm about to go down a rabbit hole of ideas I have for what Starfield could be doing, but for me, it starts off with the when. Like, when do you actually get these updates? And I think there's two obvious likely candidates. One, I think, more likely than the other. The one I think is more likely is the Xbox June showcase. The other place that you can learn more about Starfield could be the Nintendo Direct. I have personally been predicting a major Xbox presence during that Nintendo Switch 2 reveal Direct, which is not far off now. We're hearing rumors of Halo making the jump to other platforms. Gears is a video we just made this week. That seems to be making the jump to other platforms, and it's all designed to make the next game from all of these companies way bigger than they could have ever imagined. At the same time, the fun conflict of interest when it comes to Bethesda Game Studios is we also have an Oblivion remake rumor floating around, and I also predicted that would be at the Nintendo event. And since we're kind of floating around Oblivion anniversary timing, I don't know if that's going to get a separate announcement outside of the event or something like that, but the rumor was that was hitting in June. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, if Bethesda wants to show up and do a little double feature, I wouldn't hate that, but I don't know why. It's tough for me to imagine Starfield running on Nintendo Switch 2 hardware, but I also feel like the morbid curiosity of just like, does this run well? Might take over for some people, and they might just spring to buy it when it's on sale for that reason alone. But anyway, my prediction is the June showcase, especially because I think ports can be announced at these types of showcases for Xbox now, since they just confirmed in an interview with Xbox Era that moving forward, they're going to have PlayStation imagery, they're going to have Nintendo imagery, they're going to let people know where they can play their games when people are watching their showcases. So I don't know if they're actually going to step out on stage and be like, PlayStation fans, we got something for you, but the trailer might end with a PlayStation logo. So that gets me into idea one. Bethesda says in this tweet here, we know you're eager for an update, and we truly appreciate your passion for Starfield. The team has been hard at work, and while we're not ready to share specific details just yet, we have a lot of exciting things planned for the game this year that we can't wait to talk about when the time is right. We're always listening and taking your feedback to heart. Thanks for being part of this journey with us. So let's start off with, I think, objective number one, the shot in the arm. If we're very objective about Starfield, whether you love it or hate it, the player count, I don't think, is where it needs to be compared to other Bethesda Game Studios games. They have set this standard for themselves. It's because they make damn good video games that are fun to go back to over and over and over. Games like Fallout 4, Skyrim, Fallout 3, of course, New Vegas from Obsidian, but still built on Bethesda tech. You have all of these fantastic games, Skyrim, that people keep coming back to over and over and over. I think Starfield needs to get to that level before Bethesda moves on, or at least try to do that. I think the PS5 port is step one, especially when you're Xbox and you're looking at ways to count your cash up. You see what we just covered in a previous video of what Forza Horizon 5 has accomplished on the market. And I think that is a stronger example than most of what other Xbox ports can do. I don't think every Xbox port is going to be #1 across all of the charts. I do think Forza Horizon 5 was always set to be a massive hit on PlayStation, especially when they have a built-in racing game audience thanks to Gran Turismo. But nonetheless, I do think Starfield would make some waves on PlayStation because all of the updates that we've waited for on Xbox and PC have been included here in this full release on at least PlayStation. So I could see a world where it gets announced on that stage with like the next big update. So the question is, what is next for Starfield beyond just moving it to another system? Because I think this is the real last big shot to define whether or not Starfield gets support for years, or this is the last year of Starfield support, at least in my opinion. So I think it is the great expansion that we thought Starfield Shattered Space would be. I'm not the only one saying this. You go ahead and look at like the Steam reviews. The expansion did not go over well with most people. And at best, I hear people saying it's fine. Some people love it. I don't agree, but I'm glad that other people enjoyed it. In fact, as I've said before, I envy them. Now, Todd confirmed with me in my interview that a new expansion is due out sometime in 2025 for Starfield. So at the very least, we're getting one more. Bethesda already recommitted to a big update sometime this year. Answering what the next expansion should be for Starfield is a tricky question to maneuver, because in my head, leading into the launch of Starfield Shattered Space, I was like, this is exactly what the game needs. And I don't know if it's foolish of me to say, try it again, but do better. Like, I think that there were great artistic values, because I do think at least Shattered Space had like checked all of the boxes that I'm looking for in a BGS experience, just none of them were done particularly well. So if that's a learning experience for this company that's been around for a long while, then we take those lessons and we carry them into another expansion and try that again. Because I can't really think of what else I would want from Starfield other than another planet, another storyline, this one feeling more meaningful. Especially, I think this one could carry on from, I'll just say, where the ending of the main story kind of opens up some possibilities. So that's what I would personally pick, but I don't know if I would shake up the formula here. Like, it's still a great idea to just put us on a planet and let us roam around and get new weapons and whatnot. I just hope that they do all of that a lot better. Now, some people will say, we'll give up and move on to Elder Scrolls 6. But to me, my counterpoint is, I do think Starfield expansion content is really important for the morale of Elder Scrolls 6. And if Bethesda doesn't understand that, then here I am to hopefully help them understand that. Because, you know, I've been part of this community for so long. We connect these dots constantly, so Bethesda needs to start connecting them with us. What I mean by that is, when Starfield was about to come out, people were excited because when you really looked at the broad timeline of what Bethesda Game Studios has done, you had Fallout 4, which for many people was a really great time. For others, it was a great shooter with light RPG elements, and for many, it was a miss. 76 comes up afterwards, and while it's definitely redeemed itself now, when it launched, it's like, okay, Bethesda shouldn't do multiplayer. That was their bump in the road. Starfield felt like getting back to basics. We're single player, dialogue-centric, questing-centric, so hope was renewed. It's a little bit of a different situation now, though, when you do all of the things you're known for doing, and people are feeling like you're missing a quality bar now. So I feel like Bethesda needs to have what I call the Far Harbor moment. And yes, if that sounds familiar, it's what I was saying before Shattered Space. You need to have the clapback moment. When people were saying Fallout 4 could not be a deep RPG, Fallout 4 can't support choice and consequence because it's on the creation engine, whatever that means, dude, because the same tech that was used to build the games like that was what we used to build something like New Vegas. But nonetheless, Bethesda had that moment in Far Harbor where they were like, oh, watch this. Here's a strong role-playing experience. And it was fantastic. So I think Starfield needs that for Elder Scrolls 6 morale to be like, relax, we can do that. Why does that matter? Because when I found out the person who directed Far Harbor was then moving on to direct the quest for Starfield, I was excited. And while everyone may disagree, I felt like I got reward on investment there because I think they cooked with a lot of Starfield quests. So yeah, I just think at the end of the day, a very strong expansion, even if it's just an optical win, is a good thing for Bethesda Game Studios. I think they need it after this last couple of years, frankly. If your biggest win is the recovery of 76, like 6 years after the launch, that's not an L by any means, but I think they'd want Starfield to be in that positive conversation as well. The question is about investment in a time where game development is so expensive and how far you have to invest to get to that point of turning the corner. You know, when you look at, like, we bring up Cyberpunk a lot, but Cyberpunk needed an anime, consistent DLC, consistent updates, no real going dark outside of like pretty immediately after launch. And then the final expansion in Phantom Liberty was really the icing on the cake. Also, a lot of people point to comebacks in games like No Man's Sky or Sea of Thieves, but I do think it was a different time for gaming, is what I would say. I think with so many great options available, people don't have the patience that they once did to wait around for games to get better over time. The expectation is to be really good, or at least great, at launch, and then build on top of that. So the question to me is, if you're Bethesda Game Studios, do you just invest all of this to put Starfield on that level, or do you just move on to Elder Scrolls 6? And I think one's a more wise business decision than the other. So that's just to illustrate the importance of the next Starfield expansion in my eyes. Now, what exactly that expansion holds, I think that is why we've had such prolonged silence on Starfield, because Todd's response to Starfield Shattered Space's reception, I've been critical of it in the past, but it does tell us something when you look at it from a different angle, right? That statement I'm talking about is how they shouldn't have done the buggy in a free update and instead rolled it into Shattered Space. Basically, this to me indicates, whether it's right or wrong, a shift in philosophy at Bethesda Game Studios, potentially, which is that, could we have won them over, even if, say, the exploration's mid, the questing's mid, yada, yada, yada. If the content is king approach, think of past updates for Starfield, right? Quests in the main game, like bounty hunting. Here's Creation Club. They have all the quality of life stuff, like the dialogue camera, the difficulty tuning. They add the buggy, plus Shattered Space itself. Mind you, in all objectivity, they all have their own suite of issues that I'm not really talking about here, but I do wonder if this new Bethesda philosophy is to give players so much that it's kind of tough to argue with it if it's something bad just because content is king to so many people. So I do think reading between the lines there explains a lot when you look at that statement combined with this statement as well. Like, hey, we should have probably given the buggy as part of the expansion, not for free, because maybe Todd viewed that as taking something away from the discovery of a new feature / mechanic in Starfield. Combining that with like, hey, we do have a lot on the plate here. So if you were able to combine all of this, now to kind of put a bow on this conversation, you have maybe a PS5 port announcement alongside the new expansion, alongside a bunch of previously planned free updates that'll just be rolled into this expansion. And maybe there is a level of like tackling what people would identify as core issues with the game. These are things like, oh, I don't want a ton of procedural planets. So what if Bethesda found a way to do a location pack? Like, I remember specifically reaching out directly to Bethesda Game Studios and being like, first bit of feedback, you guys should do a location pack. You should find a way to code a bunch of these planets with like 1 to 2 interesting things to find. I know that adds up to like thousands of locations, but if you do that over time, especially now with like Xbox moving these games to other platforms, by the time they're at the end of their lifespans and another audience gets it, they're going to have this extremely full game that kind of realizes the vision of Starfield. So I just wonder what they're going to do with it. But anyway, this has just been a ton of speculation. No doubt y'all are going to flame me in the comments for this one, no doubt. But I wanted to talk about Starfield and what was going on here. It's just a little extra video this week. So let me know what you're thinking down below. What do you think is going to happen with Starfield's next expansion? When do you think we hear about this stuff? I'm sure many of you already told me you don't care that it's coming at all. But for those who do care, who are interested, because for me, I did not like Shattered Space, but base game Starfield was great enough for me to be like, I still want to see like if they can cook. I still want to have faith in Bethesda. For those of you who are interested on that level, let me know what you're expecting. Fire away down below. Other than that, take excellent care of yourselves, and I will catch you in the next video. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.